we're left with tashaffu'. What's tashaffu' all about? The concept of tashaffu'. The concept of tashaffu' is that you go to the grave of Rasulullah ﷺ directly. You go to the Hujra al-Sharifa, you give your salam to Rasulullah ﷺ, and then you'd ask Rasulullah directly to intercede for you. You say, Ya Rasulullah ishfa'li. Ya Rasulullah ishfa'li inda rabbik fi qada'i hajati kada wa kada. Oh Rasulullah, intercede on my behalf with Allah that Allah fulfills my need, and then you mention your need. They consider this as shirk akbar. Shirk akbar takes you out of the fold of Islam. Your wealth is halal, your blood is halal, your wife is divorced from you, you're no longer married to her, your kids, we've got to separate your kids from you to the end of it. And if you happen to be at their time and they got their hands on you, you're gone. Your head is flying. And they applied it in action. Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, in his history, if you read the history that his students wrote, from among his students was a man by the name of Ibn Ghannam. He has a book known as Tariq Ibn Ghannam. He speaks about the ghazawat of his Shaykh. And if you read it, you think like, well, this is another version of another prophet making jihad against the mushrikeen and having futuhat. That's exactly the wordings that he uses. The wordings that you find in the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he would send out a battalion here, a battalion there. This qaryah would accept Islam, this village would accept Islam, they would fight these mushrikeen, and then Allah would give them victory. You find the same stories mentioned in the books of his students. Muhammad bin Ghannam, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, one of his students being Ibn Ghannam. So they say this is shirk. We say, why is it shirk? They say because you are now calling upon the dead, and to call upon the dead is that you means that you are worshipping the dead. We say, what are you talking about? Calling upon means dua. Dua is of different types. You have the linguistic dua, and then the ibadi shar'i dua. Dua, the word dua, if you look at it linguistically, from a linguistic point of view, if you open up an Arabic dictionary, it has the meaning of nida. Nida literally means just to call out. I say, ya fulan, this in the Arabic language is known as dua. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Sahaba al-Kiram, لا تجعلوا دعاء الرسول بينكم كدعاء بعضكم بعضا. Don't make the dua that you make towards Rasulullah like the dua that you make to one of your own. Meaning when you call out to Rasulullah, don't call him by his name. Call him by his title. Say, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Nabi Allah, with respect. You don't say, Ya Muhammad, this is lack of adab. This is lack of respect. Don't make the dua that you make towards Rasulullah like the dua that you make to your friend or one of your own. So what's the word that's used here? Dua. If we understand that according to your definitions, so the Sahaba here, when they were calling out to Rasulullah, they were worshipping Rasulullah. When you're calling each other, are you worshipping one another? No. This is linguistic dua. So we say that when a person comes to the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's making a linguistic dua, not a dua of ibadah. For a dua to be a ibadah, for a dua to be an act of worship, it must be coupled with a certain belief behind it. So I gave this example to some brothers today. Imagine Sayyidina Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam is before us here. We know Isa alayhi salam will come down in the last days of this dunya. Imagine Isa alayhi salam is before us here, and we have here Imam Sahib, and we have here a Christian. Okay? Imam Sahib says, Ya Isa ibn Maryam, Ya Isa ibn Maryam, Ya Ruh Allah, Assalamu alayk. Oh Isa, the son of Maryam, oh the spirit of Allah, peace be upon you. And then you have a Christian here that says the same thing. Ya Isa ibn Maryam, Ya Ruh Allah. Oh Isa, the son of Maryam, oh spirit of Allah. What would you say about the action? The action looks like it's the same action. Same wording, same wording. But when the Imam Sahib said it, it's considered as a linguistic dua, and he will get rewarded for it because of the respect that he showed to Isa alayhi salam. But when the Christian calls out to Isa alayhi salam, we say that this calling out, yeah, it's a nida, but it's coupled with the belief that Isa alayhi salam is what? Is the son of Maryam. Is the son of God, billah. So his calling out is an act of worship, it's kufr, it's shirk, he is blameworthy for that. So the action is one. What made it different? It's the intention, the i'tiqad behind it. Similarly, we say when a person goes to the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says, Ya Rasulullah ishfa'ali, he is making a linguistic dua, not a dua of ibadah. For it to be considered as a dua of ibadah, he must come with an i'tiqad, a certain belief. He must believe that Rasulullah is a God, or God's child or something similar to that for it to be considered as kufr and shirk. Out of the way. Tayyib, what is your proof that the dead can hear? That's another one, yeah. What is your proof? So we've gotten that out of the way. It's clear. He might say, okay, but why are you calling out to him? He can't hear you. We say, who said he can't hear? The dead can't hear. The majority of the Salaf, even Ibn Taymiyyah, even Ibn Qayyim, which we don't take as references, you guys take them as references, are in agreement that the dead can hear. Those that have passed away can hear. Plus, who are you to say that Rasulullah is dead? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade us in the Quran. In word for word, literally he forbade us from referring to the shuhada as being dead. لا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء. Don't refer to them as dead. You're not allowed. If that's the case with the shuhada, who are you to say that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is dead? This is a lack of adab. This is a lack of respect and honor towards the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam. This in itself is haram. It's blameworthy. And if it's said with a ill feeling towards Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasallam, it becomes shirk and kufr wal-'iyadhu billah. Becomes major kufr. You've left the fold of Islam. So be careful with your words. How you should word the sentence is, what is the proof that those in the barzakh can hear? That's what your question should be. And in reply, we would say that the Salaf al-Salihun, majority of them were of the opinion that those in the barzakh can hear, and this was agreed upon by the scholars. From among them is Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim. They are in agreement that those that are in the barzakh can hear. So Rasulullah can hear you. If he can hear you, and he can hear your rida, then why can't he intercede on your behalf? They'll say, no, if he intercedes on your behalf, then he becomes shirk. How does it become shirk? When he was alive, you guys agreed with us. When he was in this dunya, you guys agreed with us that you can ask him for dua. And you guys also agree with us that on the day of judgment, if we were to ask him for dua, then it's not shirk. Then how does it magically become shirk in the barzakh? So in the dunya, it's not shirk. On the day of judgment, it's not shirk. But in the barzakh, it's shirk. It doesn't make sense. Where's the logic behind it? If it was permitted in the dunya, it should be permitted in the barzakh. It should continue to be permitted on the day of judgment. Plus, on top of that, we have a dalil for direct dalil from the Quran al-Karim that's considered as a hujjah qat'iyah. What is the dalil? Surah An-Nisa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran al-Karim, he says, وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ إِذْ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ جَاءُوكَ فَاسْتَغْفَرُوا اللَّهَ وَاسْتَغْفَرَ لَهُمُ الرَّسُولُ لَوَجَدُوا اللَّهَ تَوَّابًا رَحِيمًا. If only when the wrongdoers, those that fall into sin, were to come to you, Ya Rasulullah, and they would ask Allah for forgiveness, and they would ask you to make istighfar on their behalf, then they would have found Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be most forgiving, accepting of their repentance. They'll say this was specific to the life of Rasulullah. Again, like the hadith, this was specific. We say, where is the dalil? Where is the dalil of takhsis? Who said that it's khas to the life of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam? Bring me a statement from the Salaf al-Salihun. Where's Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar, Uthman, Ali, the 4 A'immah of Islam, the 6 Muhaddithin of Islam, the great A'immah of Islam, who said that this verse was only applicable when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was alive? No man. Or do you want better? Go and check the tafsir of Ibn Kathir. Ibn Kathir was a student of who? Ibn Taymiyyah. Sometimes he was affected by certain points that Ibn Taymiyyah held. Other times he was a Sunni in positions. On this issue, he's clearly in line with what we are saying. If you look at the tafsir of Ibn Kathir of this ayah, he says that if only the wrongdoers were to come to you, Ya Rasulullah, and they were to ask you, Ya Rasulullah, to make istighfar on their behalf with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they would have found Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be oft forgiving, most merciful. And then he mentions the story of Al-Utbi. Al-Utbi was a man that's mentioned in our history books. He came to visit Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's grave. And then he fell asleep besides the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's grave. But before he fell asleep, he heard a Bedouin coming in. He gave his salam to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then he said, Ya Rasulullah, I have come to you because Allah has said in the Quran, وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ إِذْ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ, to the end of the verse. And I have come to you, Ya Rasulullah, مُسْتَغْفِرًا مِنْ ذَنْبِي, asking for your shafa'ah with Allah. And then he sang some lines of poetry. يا خير من دفنت بالقاع أعظم فطاب من طيبهن القاع والأكم نفسي الفداء لقبر أنت ساكنه فيه العفاف وفيه الجود والكرم. Then he took off. So Al-Utbi fell asleep. After the man had finished, he fell asleep. And in his dream, he seen Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He came to him and he said, Ya Al-Utbi, get up and follow that man and inform him that Allah has forgiven his sins. So he got up, he went to the man and he gave him the bashara that his sins had been forgiven. Why would Imam Ibn Kathir mention this story like this? Why didn't he say that this was restricted to the life of Rasulullah? That after Rasulullah transitioned into the barzakh, it is now considered as kufr, shirk, bid'ah to the end of it. Why? Why the double standards? If Ibn Kathir happened to be at the time of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, then unfortunately, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab would have, chopped him up also, like he did many countless innocent Sunni Muslims of the time. Now, some so you've got in the English world, any book that's translated by Dar es-Salam, put 101 question marks on it. Why? Because Dar es-Salam is a Wahhabi publishing press, and they meddle around a lot with the works of the scholars. From among the books that they have meddled around with is the tafsir of Ibn Kathir's work that they've translated, and they've omitted all of this stuff about tawassul and tabarruk and tashaffu'. They've taken it all out. Tamam? Now we've got that issue out of the way. We took the issue of ziyaratul qubur out of the way, the issue of tawassul, asking Allah through Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or through a pious man out of the way. We got tashaffu' out of the way. What are we left with? Istighatha. This is the number one hot issue that they bring up. Istighatha. They say istighatha, you're calling upon other than Allah, you're worshipping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah, ad-du'a mukhu al-ibadah. Wa qala rabbukum ud'uni astajib lakum inna alladhina yastakbiruna an ibadati, to the end of the note, verses and ahadith that they cite. How did the scholars reply to this? Again, they said, here you guys are confused. The scholars, they said, you're confusing two masail. Dua, linguistic dua, dua which is ibadah. Linguistic dua is permitted, it's halal, we do it every day and night, we're making dua to one another. They say, but here, because you're calling upon someone that is far away and he can't hear you, it's shirk, because now you're making him like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who hears everything. We say, okay, what if I mention to you guys a story from the Salaf al-Salihun of a pious man that unfortunately according to you fell into shirk? They'll say, bring it, but it has to be authentic, it has to be sahih. You tell them simply, go and open up the tariq work, the history work of Ibn Kathir, the biography of Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khattab. You have a problem with Umar bin al-Khattab, then you're a Rafidi. You're a Rafidi that's upon misguidance. If you die upon that, then your state is 100 times worse than a zani and a sharib al-khamr. Waliyadu billah. Sayyidina al-Imam Ibn Kathir, when he mentioned the biography of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he mentions a famous incident that took place, and it's authentic. It's authentic, it's sahih. What's the incident? Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu sent out an army towards the lands of Persia. So they went out, and their commander was a man by the name of Saria. Sent him out, and then they went into the lands and they were about to meet the enemy. What had happened is the army had situated itself in such a way where behind them there was a mountain, but there was room for people or for the enemy to come from behind the mountain and attack them. So they were about to meet the enemy, and they didn't have their back covered. Behind them was a mountain, but they were far away from it. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu was in Medina at the time. And in the narration, he mentions that he was giving the khutbah al-Jum'ah. All of a sudden, as he's giving khutbah al-Jum'ah, he calls out, he says, Ya Saria, al-Jabal, al-Jabal. Oh Saria, go back to the mountain, go back to the mountain. So you can imagine if I just now get up and call out to someone, I say, Ya Ali Lebanese Jam in Australia. Tamam? Everyone's going to think like, what's going on here? What's happening? So then he continued on the khutbah. Time went past, weeks, maybe months, until eventually that army came back to Medina al-Munawwara. When they came back to Medina al-Munawwara, Sadia comes to Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, and he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, what happened? What's going on? You saved us. You saved us. We were about to be ambushed, caught off guard by the enemy. All of a sudden, I heard your voice saying to us to go back to the mountain, so I went back to the mountain. So Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu starts to explain himself to those that are present. He said, when I was giving my khutbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed to me, He presented before me what was happening on the battlefield. So I made that call. So the people said, how did you know, how did you know that your call is going to reach them? Look at the justification of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. And again, it's a authentic narration. He said, indeed, inna lillahi junudan. Indeed, there are soldiers of Allah all around. And I said to myself, maybe one of these soldiers of Allah will take my call to Saria and cause him to hear it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, istajaba lahu, Allah accepted what he intended and made his call reach out all the way to Saria. Where was Umar at the time? In Medina. There was no communication, no phones, no emails, nothing. So according to the principles that they follow, this act of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu would be classified as what? Shirk and kufr, because he has called upon other than Allah. He might say, if he's a bit witty about it, he might say, but here Umar radiallahu anhu wasn't asking for oath, he wasn't asking for help. We would say, who told you he wasn't asking for help? Who's the army for? It's for Sayyidina Umar. Umar is seeking the help of who? For the protection of the army. He's seeking the help of Saria for the protection of the army. So he's still seeking growth from Saria. He's telling him, make sure all of the army go back to the mountains so they are not attacked. So he did seek help from Saria. So he can't get out of that. One, he wasn't present. Second of all, he saw aid from him. So according to your principles, he's a mushrik wal iyadu billah. So dua, we say to him, dua, this dua that we're making in istighatha is a dua lughawi, not a dua shar'i. It's not a dua of ibadah. For it to be considered as a dua of ibadah, it must be coupled with the intention or the belief that you are worshipping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, we would fall back on the hadith of the A'ma. The hadith of the A'ma, not only does it teach you to make dua through Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it also teaches you to call out to Rasulullah alayhi salatu wa sallam, to make istighatha. Because in the dua, look at it. Ya Muhammad, O Muhammad, I ask Allah through you the fulfillment of my need. And then also if you focus on the ending of the hadith, Allahumma shafi'hu fiyya. Oh Allah, accept the intercession of your Prophet on my behalf. So according to the literal meaning of the hadith is telling us that when you have a need, call unto Allah, use Rasulullah as your wasila, call unto Rasulullah. What type of call? A call of ibadah? No, a call of nida. And inshallah, God willing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make your call reach Rasulullah, and you'll know of your need, and then at the end you're saying, Allahumma shafi'hu fiyya, oh Allah, accept his intercession on my behalf. Meaning that when your call reaches Rasulullah, he'll intercede on your behalf, and then at the end you're saying, Ya Allah, accept his intercession on my behalf. So he breaks completely all of your principles of shirk and bid'ah and kufr. That's finalized. Now